Welcome to the Creative Community Podcast presented by Destination Arete. I'm David.
And I'm Mark, and we're building a community of creatives who work together to achieve creative excellence. And today's guest is illustrator and designer, Stephen Crotts.
Stephen has this unique design sensibility that he actually explores with us in our conversation. And he's well known for his woodblock style illustrations. He does a lot of cover art for musicians, authors. In fact, we first became aware of Stephen thanks to this book here by Andrew Peterson that's sitting on the shelf behind me during the interview. And we are just big fans of what he creates. He paints, he draws, he illustrates, he does it all. And we love every bit of it.
He truly is a Renaissance man. And Stephen shares with us the woodblock artists that have impacted him, as well as he talks about the roles that stories about his family and stories from God's word play in his creative process. So this interview is jam-packed. He explores a lot of different things, and we were super grateful that he sat down and had this conversation with us over Zoom. So without further ado, here's our conversation with illustrator Stephen Crotts.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I live in South Carolina. I grew up here, and I am a recent full-time illustrator. So this is kind of a new world for me, but I've been building to it throughout several years as I've been working in the museum industry, doing design work and other things. And so have finally this year begun to do full-time drawing work, and most of that's been in publishing and also some album covers and things like that. And I'm so fortunate to have been able to work with a lot of folks that I admire their content. And so, it's been fun to kind of partner along with things that feel worthwhile to help, bring things to life that way. One thing that I've recently gotten to do was this net Bible. I was able to do a piece for every book, so 66 different drawings.
Oh, wow.
It was quite a fun thing. And so there's a piece at the beginning of each one, and we just kind of had to go through and figure out what is the image that works for each of these texts that make up the library that is this book. So that was fun.
That's amazing. Where can people get that?
Yeah, it's on Amazon and everything. It's put out by Thomas Nelson. It's called the Net Art Edition.
Okay, Art Edition. Yeah. Okay, good to know.
That is really cool. I think I remember you posting about that and kind of flipping through a couple of the drawings, and it's man, I could say a lot about it, but I think I'll go ahead and save that for a little bit later in the conversation and ask you the first question here that we sent you. Left alone in a room with a pencil and a piece of paper, are you going to end up illustrating something, or are you going to end up designing something?
I feel like it's a trick question. So because so much of what I end up doing, is really the combination of design and drawing. Most of my projects involve the incorporation of text with an image. So I think that I get more of a kick out of what might be considered designed than just purely illustration. So that's something I gotta wrestle with a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't find myself just doodling for the heck of it a whole lot. I mean, usually when I'm doodling, it is with something in mind, some kind of project in mind. So unless I'm observationally drawing, like in my sketchbook, which I try to do that fairly often, but unless I'm looking at something and drawing it, I'm usually sort of plotting toward something that I'm scheming on.
That's awesome. Within that, you kind of talked about the ideas of designing versus illustrating and them kind of coming together in the work that you do with text, like with that Nahum piece, for example, that you just showed, it has, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later, but like the illustration itself is so designed, like especially with woodblock, each shape is so uniquely thought out. Do you think about, at this point, do you even think about text differently than you think about drawing, or is it all just shapes to you at this point?
Yeah, good question. Probably, yeah, it's probably mostly subliminal, those principles of design that you get early on, but also that get hammered in as you stumble and flail through trying to make real things happen. They just stick in there. So yeah, I guess it's all just shapes, really. I mean, obviously, when you got a message to communicate, there are hierarchies. There's more considerations, like such and such has to be bigger than this, but still it's trying to move the eye around to emphasize one thing or another, whether it's text or the central point of your drawing. Those things, sometimes you've got them both having to work in concert, but at the end of the day, it's all just guiding someone's eye around, leading them along where it is that you want them to go.
Well, that's great. We want to kind of ask you about kind of that journey from getting, because when you look at your art, like even just the book that David has behind him, Adorning the Dark by Andrew Peterson, like when you look at your work, it's like this great, it's woodcut fantasy Christian folk illustration. Like it's just like those words. But we, as artists, we have so many influences, So we wanted to ask you, can you take us through the funnel of your influences to where you got to kind of where you are now? Like the biggest part at the top and then kind of filtering all the way down.
I think that for me, a lot of what I keep going back to, there's sort of a comfort of solidity, familiarity with some sort of idealized past, maybe a historical sense that probably is imaginary, to some degree, like, but yeah, I was always fascinated with my family's history, my hometown's history, and so if that's an interest, you're going to be bumping up against old stuff, and just the aesthetics of especially the late 19th and early 20th century seems to be what captivates me the most. Maybe around the time that my great grandparents were born, and I got to hear stories about that era from my grandparents, looking back fondly on their parents' generation. And I don't know, for whatever reason, that has ended up being a place that I just go to a lot visually. Influences, though, creatively, that's a whole other question. People who have spurred me along, whether it's family members and teachers and mentors. There's so many people who are not even artistic necessarily, on the surface, who've pushed me along. But visually, I think generally it's this older kind of look and feel.
I love that idea, because if you showed me any of your illustrations, your woodblock, and said this was the first picture ever printed in the printing press, I would be like, oh yeah, it is. Just because it has that I guess you said that historical idea to it, where it's pulling from something historical, but it's also pulling from something imaginary, and it's coming together to make something that exists, or at least in the illustration world, the world of that illustration, it exists.
Yeah, I think the sort of surface style and the visual vernacular that I'm trying to speak with, in my mind at least, has some sort of historical integrity. It comes from a place where the whole was considered. When books were being made, the block was being considered alongside the crafting of the typefaces and all this. So there was a wholeness in that visual culture that is easily lost when things are come easier, when you can get a practical result without a whole lot of thought now with technology. So I'm trying to lean on that visual integrity, but also, like you say, use imagination and point toward ideas that may not have visually appeared in some of those earlier things. So
I have two things that I really want to ask. I'm gonna pick one of them. With museum design, were you designing like displays, or were you just designing like print media or signage? Or because I want to know if that helped you with shapes. Like, were you designing a whole display that needed to bring someone in,
right.
or what?
Yeah, no. So really, my job there was marketing and graphic design for promoting things and that sort of deal. Later on, there I was able to do a little bit of collaboration with the folks who made exhibits. That is a whole skill set onto its own, and some really brilliant people I was able to work with there. But I think the great benefit and so many of the things that I learned had to do with just the diversity of ideas that we were presenting, whether it's art or natural history or historical places, music. So there was kind of a multi-curricular approach, and that was fun to interpret visually, and very instructive.
So I'm always curious to know how people develop their imagination, because people with big imaginations have something that stirs that. And I don't know, are you a big reader, or growing up, did you read a lot of books, or what is it that you think that kind of fuels that? Is there something you do now that you think helps keep that idea expanded for you, or?
Certainly, yeah, I enjoyed books growing up and still do. I'm not as literarily nerdy as some of my other illustrator friends are. I'd love to be, but it was books and movies coming up, and also, as I kind of touched on, stories from real life stories from the past always captivated my imagination, and still do. So, and I think that shows up in my work. Like, the thing that I can't get away from is, sort of biblical narrative stuff. I just really enjoy exploring that visually. It helps me to that's one way that I sort of wrestle with all that subject matter. But yeah, I think drawing can be a way of kind of getting things square in your head. What do I think about this or that point in history, or this or that story? It's a way to enter into the experiences of real people or imagined people, but to kind of get your way all the way around that person and figure out what makes them who they are. Yeah,
I love it.
I guess the hope somewhere deep down is like, maybe this will help me figure out whatever it is I'm supposed to be, or maybe it's a way of avoiding that. I don't know.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that's great. The question we're all trying to figure out, right?
Sure.
That's awesome. All right. So our third question is, so it's a scenario. You're on a desert island and you only had enough room on your life raft to bring 3 woodblock artists' work to look at for inspiration for the rest of your life. Who are the 3 artists that you're choosing, and why?
He's shaking his head.
Yeah, that's just not fair. Yeah, good to consider this one. So, the great thing about this question is that you're only limiting woodblock artists.
Oh.
Right. I'm not even. Imagine if I
had a whole library, I'm assuming, of everyone else. So that's
right.
good.
Right. Exactly. Imagine if I had just said like artists. I would have been. Or, man.
Um, so one person who is a contemporary artist who's really plunged me into looking at woodcut engravings and that sort of thing is Barry Moser. I think a lot of people who deal with biblical subjects are looking to Moser. He did his Pennyroyal Caxton Bible in the late 90s, and there's a great film about that, Thief Among the Angels. And so yeah, Moser is a big one. Looking back a little bit further, there's a British engraver, Reynolds Stone. He did a lot of book plates, and he did things for the United Kingdom, for the royals, and all kind of various things. He was a typographer, but also an engraver, and then his work really flows out of that British wood engraving tradition, which really started with Thomas Bewick in the 18th century. So Bewick is pretty indispensable if you're looking at woodcut or wood engraving. They all kind of exist in that same relief printmaking world. So yeah, those are some. It would be bad to leave out Dürer, but yeah, that's a tough choice.
Okay. Well, thank you for narrowing it down for us and for explaining why, the biblical narrative, kind of that early influence. So thanks for explaining to us why that's helpful. So, and then I just have a selfish question, which is one that I really want to know is, and I don't even know if, I hope, Stephen, that you can answer this for me. Whose idea was it to have the moon glow on the Adorning the Dark book?
Oh, wow. That was my art director at B&H. That was a total surprise for both me and the author, Andrew.
Really?
Yeah, that was a great, I think she told me before she told him, but yeah, the getting that moon glow was a real treat. Just a little surprise.
Yeah. Because I just remember the first time I ever, just turn out the lights and head into bed and being like, oh my goodness, Adorning the Dark glows in the dark. Like, this is,
man.
It was just that one little more touch that I was just like, this book already, like, I already felt so well loved by this book, but then it just like took it to like the next level where it was just one more thing. So
in New Orleans, they call that lagniappe, a little something extra. That's a good thing.
Love it.
I love it. Well, our listener question, we had a couple people put in questions, and we usually pick our favorite one, and it should be an easy one after all these isolation scenarios we've thrown at you with being alone in a room and on a desert island and stuff. But no, they wanted to know what aspect of woodblock printmaking is your like what aspect of that process is your favorite, or what do you enjoy about it?
Well, okay, so I really should say a disclaimer here that I'm no kind of woodblock expert. I've done some of that, but really, I think more than anything, I'm drawing from the visual culture that comes out of that tradition. I've done some printmaking. I've got a little press. Took some classes in college on it, and it has helped me to understand and draw differently. I do draw even on an iPad or a tablet. I'm carving out light out of a dark background, so that's different, and I really enjoy it. Even if I end up with a result that is more balanced, like not necessarily more dark than light, it still helps me somehow achieve a result that I don't if I start with dark on light. Mm-hmm. So that sort of carving out is, I'm not sure why it gives me so much pleasure, but it does. One thing that it does is I find that I draw heavier. Things feel a little weightier when I'm doing it in that backwards direction.
Hmm.
Then, of course, if I'm doing it on an actual block, not only is it light out of dark, but it's actually reversed left to right as well. So, which is fun when you're doing text.
Oh my goodness.
Not fun, but
What is the one that they used to mess up? I forget. It's P's and Q's. Yeah, your P's and your Q's. Because you're doing it back. Yeah. Sorry. My friends and I had a conversation and that came up the other day. So
yeah. I think probably my least favorite part is when you get the first good print, that's nice. But then when you're having to like get 40 or 100 good prints, that can get really annoying because you're gonna have a lot of bad ones. But yeah.
I watch a woodblock shop on YouTube, David Bull, and I think the thing about that specific process, I know a lot of your illustrations maybe aren't physically a print, but they're, a drawing and then they're digitally touched up or vice versa. But I think it's something about what you said earlier about the wholeness of the approach. Like with woodblock, everything has to be exactly right every single time. You have to have the notch right. You have to have the right amount of ink, on each layer. And so I think that when you do get a good print, you've done the entire process excellently and you can say, here's my result.
It's definitely satisfying. I mean, once you get it right, and I've got, abandoned blocks that were ruined early on, and it's very sad, but yeah. When you get one that is what you had hoped for, it is a satisfaction.
I have one last question for you. Are you ever going to do Chewbacca in woodcut style, whether it's a drawing?
Oh, wouldn't that be luscious? All those little hairy tendrils. I like it.
If you do, call me before you do the first run, because
But I have to tell you, I'm probably going to do size snoodles first.
Okay.
So, yeah. That's the little long-lipped creature with the feather in her cap and Jabba's band. So,
yep.
Release coming
song.
Right.
That's awesome.
Oh man. Well, hey Stephen, where can people find your work and connect with you?
Yeah, I'm at Stephen Crotts on Instagram. I've got a little Facebook page, stephencrotts.com.
Once again, we are super grateful to Stephen for joining us for today's episode. You can follow at Stephen Crotts on Instagram. That's Stephen with a PH, or you can visit his website, scrotts.com, to stay up to date with all of his latest projects and see his portfolio.
Yeah, as always, subscribe to us after you follow Stephen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or SoundCloud for more episodes like this one. And leave us a comment or a review with your favorite part of the show. That helps the algorithm know that you enjoyed it. Mark, one of our guests, Joel Santana, actually left us a comment on our most recent episode as of recording this, just sharing how he enjoyed our conversation with Andrew Hyatt and how he was inspired to make more art. So thank you guys for leaving us those comments. That lets us know what you appreciate and what you want to hear from us. And so speaking of that, feel free to share this interview with Stephen with a friend if you think that your friend might benefit from hearing what Stephen shared with us today.
Yeah, we love hearing from you guys on Facebook and Instagram. You can connect with us, Destination Arete, ARETE, for more information and more future interviews like this one. So, and you can find out, not only do we post like interviews and things like that on our social media and links to those, but you can also find out information about community activities and upcoming Arete projects. And one thing that's kind of new is our newsletter. And I really encourage you to respond to that. David is a tremendous writer and he does a great job putting those together for us. So if you are not subscribed to our newsletter, I highly recommend you doing that. David, where can people subscribe to the newsletter?
They can go to the website, destinationarte.com, and find the contact information that'll get you subscribed, or you can send us an email, destinationarte@gmail.com. And those who have the newsletter might have gotten a sneak peek lately at a project that we're working on that we can't say anything else about. So you definitely want to be subscribed to the newsletter so that you know about upcoming things that we might be who knows, selling. You never know. You never know.
You never know.
Yeah. So All right, guys. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another interview. We'll see you then.